Aloha everybody, and welcome to the Wild Wahine. This is Kaylani, and this is your astro forecast for this upcoming week. I am an astrologer, a tarot reader, and an herbalist, and I love to talk about all things spiritual. So I pick out a couple of different aspects that I think are most important for the week and share it with you so it can help you make fantastic choices in your life. If you're interested in getting a birth chart reading, make sure you contact me at www.thewildwahine.as.me. So let's dig into all of the things that are going to be happening this week. And we're starting off with Mercury squaring Neptune, which I woke up this morning and was like, yes, I feel it, because it felt like Mercury retrograde all over again. And here I am recording this video when Mercury's squaring Neptune, and I can't tell you how many times I started and stopped this video. This is our third time with this aspect. So this is our third time the merry-go-round, right? We can feel it today. It's perfecting tomorrow on the 6th, and we're going to be feeling this energy all the way into the 11th. So Mercury is our mind, right? It is the way that we communicate. It is how we're getting across information. It has to do with exchange in terms of value, in terms of selling things. So if you have a business, you want to always be tracking where Mercury is. Well, right now Mercury is direct, so we're not retrograding anymore, but it's going to feel that way because it's squaring Neptune, and Neptune is a planet of illusions and delusions and of fantasy and of symbolism and of kind of spirituality. We have Mercury who wants to give concrete details like, what time is it? It's 11:11. And we have Neptune who says, ooh, it's 11:11. That's an auspicious number. Those are angelic numbers. You know what that means? And so then you have these two energies that are just like, how are we making this work? This is the third time going around with this. On May 22nd, mark this date, you were probably feeling this. That's when Mercury was entering its shadow period. On June 3rd, Mercury was retrograde, so we hit this point again. And today, Mercury is direct, but Neptune is retrograde, which does offer a little bit more clarity. But still, it's going to feel maybe a little bit cloudy, a little bit diluted. We still might be dealing with massive breakdowns in communication. Like two people having a conversation and it's like they're talking at each other and they're not talking to each other. It can be about lies. It can be about white lies. It can be about big Machiavellian lies. It can be somebody who is manipulating you with information, manipulating your mind, manipulating you in an emotional way. It could be spiritual manipulation. Also be a great time to kind of break through things in terms of creativity. My son, who has some really strong Mercury placements, woke up this morning and was like, what is going on? It feels crazy. It feels like retrograde. I was like, no, it's just the square. And he's like trying to work on like biology, which is like, you know, very kind of linear information. And I was like, why don't you work on some of your creative stuff today, you know, and edit your YouTube channel? He started doing that and he's like, this is the best editing that I've done for my video essay. And I was like, exactly. That's the way that we work with this energy. If we have a choice, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just have to do biology, you know, and if we do, that's fine. But try to carve out some times for some of your creativity if you can, because it's a really great time for that. One of the things that you want to be careful of is to not force communication if it's not really working. It can really break down. Now is not exactly the time for that. We will feel that though, because we have a new moon that's happening in Cancer where like Mercury is also moving into Cancer. So we will be moving into a feeling place where like emotions will be open and you can communicate and have more of a heartfelt talk. Now is just not really exactly the time, and it might end up in a lot more confusion. Now Venus and Mars are in Leo, so everybody thinks they're right and everybody's, you know, kind of sticking to the ground and sticking to their guns in terms of what they believe in. So it's going to be hard to motivate folks. I would just wait till we have just a little bit more like Cancerian action, and then you can start having these conversations. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Venus. So Venus now is in the exact same position, essentially, that Mars was in last week. So we were dealing with Mars coming in there with all that big energy in Leo and kind of shaking things up, and it's opposing Saturn and it's squaring Uranus, and things are kind of exploding, as we saw a little bit on the weekend. So Venus is coming in, which likes to kind of make things okay and makes things nice again, makes things fair again. It's like coming in, kind of cleaning up the space and trying to reconnect and trying to make it whole again. That might work, and that also might not work. When we have Venus and Leo squaring Saturn in Aquarius, which we're feeling today, we're going to feel all the way into the 9th, and it's also perfecting on the 6th. In its most positive sense, we're trying to fix things. We're trying to fix things that have to do with relationships. So Venus almost always has to do with our relationships and how we're relating to things. It can be our intimate relationships. It can also be relationships that have to do with our family, because we do have this new moon in Cancer, so there's a lot of energy that has to do with family. So rebuilding that, especially if we spent time with family over the holiday, you might have realized that, yeah, I don't know if I really enjoy this as much as I thought I did. Maybe we do need to have some space. And essentially that's what Venus and Saturn, when they're in opposition, it's cooling things off. It's taking some space. It could mean feeling bluesy, feeling dissatisfied in the relationship. It could mean having a relationship that where you're no longer as intimate as you used to be, where there's not as much touch and feeling, trying to repair some of that. Having a temporary separation, like a temporary cooling off period, a time where you need to create more structures about how you're relating in the relationship. What are some of the things that are okay? What are some of the things that are not okay? Reestablishing boundaries within your relationships. It could be your work relationships. It could be relationships, you know, in your community as a whole. It's about going through difficult obstacles, going through difficult relationships. And it could be also in a very public manner, because it is Leo. As we saw last week, so many of these things are out in the open. You can see what's going on. You can kind of see the fracturing potentially of the relationship. It's a public cooling off of what's going on. It could also be the group that you're in, your family group, your friend group, your peer group, your network, your community, which is, you know, Saturn in Aquarius, kind of that community group of people not liking the relationship or telling you to cool off or giving you some advice about how you should be in your relationship. Now, Venus then moves to squaring off with Uranus, and that is going to be perfecting on the 8th, and we're going to be feeling that on the 6th all the way to the 11th. And so when Venus hits Uranus, it actually shifts, and Uranus likes to kind of upend things. It likes to, you know, surprise things, and it likes to really bring something new on the scene, something that could be quite erratic, something that could be shocking. It's all about disruption and instability within your relationships. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily always feel good, but it can be a disruption or some instability that creates a massive change, especially if you've been in a rut in your relationship. If it's been the same old, if it's been cool for a long time, if the sparks really haven't been flying, this is creating sparks. It can be a sudden awakening in a relationship, a sudden realization that you really care for the person. Sometimes that happens, sometimes when it's bad things. You know, Uranus a lot of times is a signifier of accidents. So it can be something that could be an accident, a health scare, something that almost seemed life-threatening, but everything was okay, but it made you realize how much you value the person, how much you care for the person, and how much you care for the relationship. It could be a person walking in saying they don't want to be in the relationship anymore, and that shifts things. It's like, wait, I was sitting here thinking that, taking it for granted, and now suddenly it could be ending, and I really want to fight for it. I really want it back. It could be a spark. It could be a romantic spark that happens. It reminds me a lot of the movie Chocolat. I don't know if you guys saw that, so I don't want to give too many spoilers, but it's with Juliette Binoche, and essentially it's this woman. She comes into town, and she's got some sexy chocolate, and she gives it to people, and the whole town kind of falls back in love with each other and everything, and it's really good, and you have to see it, so I don't want to spoil it too much. But it's that spark. The chocolate was the spark. Now, it's interesting because Venus does rule things like food, tastes good, and the sensual things. We think of chocolate. So it could be that. So it could just be as easy as giving your lover some chocolate and rekindling your relationship. Maybe. It could also be an unexpected love. It could be finding love in a different place, finding love in a place that you didn't think that it was there, you know, a person that you hadn't seen for a long time that you come back in contact with, and boom, it sparks up, and there you go. It could be the need for freedom, the need for excitement, the need for just something in the relationship. And it might be stepping out of the relationship to potentially find that. It could also be the impulse to indulge, especially in indulging in all of the things that are to do with the senses. So it could be shopping, and like shopping way too much and spending a lot of money and overspending to kind of sort of fill potentially the void, or that just need to like suddenly go out and do things. In terms of some of the, you know, negative things of it, it could signify an unreliable partner. It can signify a breakup. It can signify somebody rebelling against the relationship, and especially rebelling against the rules of the relationship, going outside of the rules that you establish in the relationship and wanting to create their own way of being. It could be somebody wanting to change what the relationship looks like, to either elevating it or to actually letting the relationship go so that they can be free, to choose the love and the happiness that they want, because they're no longer finding it in the relationship. relationship. It could be being attracted to people or attracted to movements that are erratic in nature, that do feel kind of passionate and sensory, but at the same time they're erratic and they're, you know, kind of like unstable, but you get kind of emotionally and passionately caught up into people or into movements as well. So with all of this energy that Venus is coming in, which is hopefully for a lot of people going to heal and be a bit of a balm for all of the Mars energy that happened, but for a lot of people it might be incredibly destabilizing and really kind of throw your relationships like way off track. Know that we will be hitting this again because we do have, as a new moon that's going to be in Cancer, we have Mercury that's moving into Cancer, so our emotions will be in an open place. We'll be able to communicate more. And then we have Mars and Venus and the moon meeting up in a conjunction next week, which will be kind of the culmination of this energy. And we're going to have that final kind of confrontation and a way to kind of work the situation out that we've been working through. So Mercury entering Cancer, which is happening on the 11th all the way to the 26th. So this is Mercury spending just a shorter time in the sign of Cancer. You know, Mercury was in Gemini for what felt like a very, very, very long time. So we have been just little processors with our mind, thinking about things, thinking about details, really wordy, really communicating in our brains a lot. So now we're going from the mind into the heart. We're dropping into the heart. We're dropping into the feeling place with our words and with our connections. So Mercury and Cancer is really looking for heartfelt connections. It's looking for heart talk. It's very intuitive in the way that it communicates. So a lot of times you can think about during this transit, like what people are thinking, what they want to say, but what they're not saying. And then you'll start a conversation and kind of open that up. You create a place, because Cancer is all about the home and creating safe spaces. You create a space where a person can communicate how they really feel. So words and thoughts and feelings mean something. It's not just information that's coming across, it's actually how you feel, and how feelings and how connecting with somebody in a feeling place will actually change things, as opposed to just giving someone information. It's kind of moving out of the logical mind and moving into kind of a much more emotional place. It's all about like learning through personal stories. So I think that this is also just really good for everybody that's a business owner, because, you know, Mercury does have a lot to do with like mercantile. That's where the word came from, and business and exchange and money and all of those kinds of things. So this is a really good time in your business if you want to share personal stories. Maybe you can contact some of your clients and ask them to leave reviews or to leave a story, or for you to talk about why you started your business, who you are, what this business means to me, what the service means to you. It's about personal information, about personal stories, and really sharing stories that make people feel something inside, as opposed to like the list of organic ingredients in your products. They want to know how it feels, you know, and how it makes you feel. We're coming from a place of too, like where we're leaving like intellectual curiosity, but we're going into like emotional curiosity, which is, I think, a really cool thing. Like, you're curious about how people feel, curious about how they feel about you, curious as to whether you hurt their feelings. How can you be a better friend? How can you be more supportive? What do they need? You're really wondering about how people feel and how you can support them and how you can uplift them. And that's like super Cancerian, and, you know, Cancer's moon ruled, so it's all about like the emotional aspect of that. And so we're also going to see our communication kind of wax and wane with the moon as well. So we're going to be tracking the moon, and we have a new moon in Cancer that's coming up as well this week, which I'll make a separate video on. So there's this quote, it says, "We don't listen to understand, we listen to reply." And to me, that's very much like when Mercury is in all air signs, and especially when it's in fire signs. But when Merc is kind of in water signs, it is listening from an emotional place. It's listening so that it can hear what's happening, so it can connect first, and then the sharing of information comes. So information doesn't really get shared unless the personal connection is made, and that's what's going to be important. And I think that's going to make for successful communication, if you connect emotionally and then connect with your information. The challenge with this is that can be emotional decision making. You know, you have Mars and Venus that are in Leo, so that's kind of big passionate energy, and now you have Mercury in Cancer, which is deeply emotional, and so most decisions are going to be made off of an emotional, passionate place. Now, this is a fantastic thing if you're trying to create, or if you're trying to figure out what your life purpose is, if you're like climbing the tall mountain of whatever that thing is that's holding you back, and you need all of that like emotion and passion to push you forward. But sometimes we do need just kind of logical practical things, the basic things. We just need to deal with the facts, and it might be a little bit more challenging to deal with just facts now when we're kind of deeply involved in our passion and deeply involved in our emotions at this time. This is a great time for talk therapy. It's a great time to write a love letter, to write a letter of appreciation. It's a great time for romance. If you're working on a novel and you didn't know how you were going to get into that intimate scene, great time for you to write that. Anything, any kind of writing which connects, writing that has to do with feelings, with poetry, all of those things. Thank you guys so much for joining me today as we talk about all of the energy in this upcoming week. I deeply hope that this has helped you out and will help you navigate some of the kind of emotional roller coasters, especially when it comes to relationships this week, because it's going to be choppy. We're going to be experiencing some chop. If you have any questions or any kind of comments, just make sure you comment them below, and you can DM me. You can also find me on Clubhouse on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, and we're going to be talking about all things that have to do with spirituality, and it's super fun every single Wednesday at 1 p.m. So thanks you guys so much for joining, and you have a lovely and fantastic week. Aloha.